All right. All right. People, come on in. I was having so many problems with YouTube today that I was just like, you know what? Screw it. I'm gonna just pre-record this and load it up. I hope y'all can tell how much, at least somewhat, how much somewhat my lighting has improved. Okay, we can go ahead and get that lighting out of the frustration window. Because I'm having so many problems with YouTube. I'm just like, yeah, whatever. I'll figure it out as we move forward. All right. So yeah, man. Welcome to Elevated Engineering. As I said before, I was going to do a pretty thorough analysis of Joe Biden's actual foreign policy plan. So let me get that up. Okay. Now, just so you all can see that I'm not completely full of crap, I am going directly to joebiden.com, right? But before I even get started on this evil motherfucker, um, man, man, I gotta give a special shout out and salute to the family of Chadwick Boseman. Man, that shit hurt, bro. Like, man, 2020, boy, 2020 is just, man, it's just pretty brutal. Um, Man, what a good brother, man. What a good brother. I just gotta kind of work myself way through this because I mean I'm still so new to this streaming game, what have you, and learning that it's not easy because you start putting yourself out there, you start losing friends, family start coming at you. I mean, it's inevitable. You just kind of gotta expect that. But with Chadwick, man, like as a matter of fact, I was motherfucking watching the Five Bloods when it first came out about month and a half ago, 2 months ago maybe. And man, I can't lie, man, that shit had me crying because just seeing the sacrifices that often U.S. Black military veterans don't ever get the credit for, man. And seeing just the fact, like, I don't want to reveal any spoilers about the movie. Go see it, but just the whole premise of the movie is, they man that they lost back in Vietnam, and they gotta go back and find his body to bring it back to the States. Whole movie's kind of crazy. It's Spike Lee joint. I loved it. I actually watched it like three times actually, because I watched it twice, and then I watched it again because I was just like, you know what, one more time. So I watched it like three times, and but what's funny? Like I remember seeing it. I remember seeing Chadwick in it, just thinking like, man, he looks so much thinner. Like if you look at him compared to like when he was in Black Panther, he's a lot bigger. But I see him in the Five Bloods. He was actually pretty thin. And I remember they were shooting the Five Bloods a while ago. They announced it maybe a couple of years ago, year and a half, a couple of years ago. And obviously that was when he was going heavily through his treatments. But you just see it like, man, he's really like thin in that movie. Knowing what we know now, I mean, we had some suspicions that he was sick, and of course his family kept it, on a hush, as they should. But man, that's just damn, man. Chadwick Boseman, man, like, man, it's Black Panther, bro. Like, what was the movie came out a little while ago, like maybe less than a year ago, where he's like, forget what it's called, but he's like this cop, and the like these two dudes commit this crime, and he like locks down all of New York. Man, what was that shit called? I forget. But man, nah, man, just celebrating his life, man. That's unfortunate, man. You know, especially with Kobe going on, Corona, 2020. It's been a lot, you know. It has been a lot. Really, it's been a lot even before that. I mean, when Nipsey died, that was 2019. But this one was like, man, especially when you see how like, you know, good of a dude he was too. I remember when I was acting, I still do it sometimes, but I was acting, man, and uh like I would see Chad stuff and I'm like, damn, man, I could never be that like nasty with it. Like I can never. This guy can do accents like it's nothing. Like he did the Black Panther Wakandan accent. Then he go and do a New York accent, like heavy New York, and then you just like, damn, like, or he do a Southern accent when as he did with like Jackie Robinson and stuff. I still haven't seen his movie about Thurgood Marshall. I gotta see that. Like that's one that's another one that's a heater. That's a heater. So nah, rest in peace to that good brother, man. We don't get too many dudes like that, especially in the industry where it's like, you know, these guys are, you know, they're celebrities, actors, entertainers. They just do and say whatever. So to have an actual brother actually be out there like doing the work for his people. Don't forget, he said specifically, T'Challa is the bad guy. He's the enemy. Uh, Remember that whole thing? And we was all going crazy over Black Panther. Black folks was fighting each other. We was all dancing with the Kente closet, like. but you know, and don't get it twisted, man. My man has definitely changed the landscape of acting and entertainment for Black folks. I think for forever. Like he showed him being Black Panther, him being the lead, him being the dude who got it in that way. He showed that, you know, Black people, not only are we beautiful, talented, but we can make a lot of freaking money, bro, just off of ourselves. Like I think that was really important aspect that he brought to the screen. No one's ever gonna do that again. And I think in the long run, we all would benefit from his motto, man, because that's really what you should be professional about your stuff. Keep people out your personal business if it ain't got nothing to do with them. Hold yourself accountable. Be regal in your presentation. Um, and kill it. Bring the bag home. You know what I'm saying? Like that's really what it comes down. Bring the bag home and make something dope. So yeah. So moving on, because the work keeps going. We don't stop. Okay. So as promised earlier this week, I have been saying that I was going to go over Joe Biden's foreign policy, which I've already gone over a number of times off camera, but this is the first time I'm going to do it on camera. I understand that this is probably going to be boring to most people who actually see this. So I don't expect to get a lot of feedback, or at least not on YouTube. I'm sure, you know, on the social media they'll have their things to say, but you know, this is just my assessment. As you all know, I try to be objective. This is elevated engineering after all, so we are here to elevate ourselves, our mind, our bodies, and our spirits, finances. Forget that, and engineering. So we're gonna be making stuff. We're gonna be making dope stuff. So first and foremost, this channel is not just strictly for one thing. I will be talking about a bunch of stuff. People who have watched me and followed me for a little while know that I do. Man, the light is cool, but it keeps kind of like flopping a little bit. I gotta get my camera, but it looks like it's daytime. That's how much I improved my lighting from last time. Last time it was like you could barely see anything, but now it's like, oh yeah, you can see a lot. But I still need a better camera. Right now I'm just relying on this Mac. But okay, so the Power of America example. This is Joe Biden's plan. Okay, first let's watch the video. Of course, I will not be watching all 45 minutes of this, but you know. Skip ahead.
President, Chancellor.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Vice President Joe Biden.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Please. Mr. President, Chancellor, thank you, Cooney, for hosting us and for welcoming generations, literally generations of new Americans to a wider and bigger and more optimistic future. You've done so much for so many people for so long, and it was a pleasure to meet you all, including you, Provost. I want to make sure I acknowledge who really does a lot of the work here. But thank you for allowing us to use this forum. Ladies and gentlemen, political wisdom holds that Americans, the American public, doesn't vote on foreign policy. But I think that's an old way of thinking. In 2019, foreign policy is domestic policy, in my view, and domestic policy is foreign policy. They're deeply connected, a deeply connected set of choices we make about how to advance the American way of life and our vision for the future. And like everything about this election, the threat that I believe President Trump poses to our national security and where we are as a country is extreme, and I don't think we can afford to ignore it. His erratic policies and failures to uphold basic democratic principles have...
Okay, I gotta stop him there. Failure to uphold basic democratic principles? What does that really mean? I mean, we're talking about foreign policy. Okay, sure. Let's listen to what else he has to say.
Muddled our reputation and our place in the world, and I quite frankly believe our ability to lead the world. So let me start today.
America hasn't led the world in anything but selling guns and being fat for about 30 years.
By reminding everyone about what has been lost with the chest thumping and self-inflicted setbacks and the manufactured crises of this administration. Folks, American foreign policy, I think, has to be purposeful and inspiring, based on clear goals driven by sound strategies.
Clear goals like being in Iraq and Afghanistan for 20 years. Why are we there again? Okay.
Not by Twitter tantrums. And the overarching purpose of our foreign policy, I believe, must be to defend and advance our security, prosperity, and democratic values that the United States stands for. Every president, Democrat and Republican, in modern history prior to Donald Trump, has understood and carried out this basic directive, often imperfectly, but have never before has it been so thoroughly abandoned. I knew when I saw Donald Trump respond to the events in Charlottesville, assigning a moral equivalence between those who promoted hate and those who opposed it, that the threat to our democracy was unlike any time, at least in my lifetime. Less than a year later, Trump again stood before the press, this time on foreign soil in Helsinki, and repeatedly deferred to Vladimir Putin over American interest, the American intelligence community, and I would argue over the American people's interest. I think it was one of the most shameful performances by a US president in modern history. And
I do distinctly remember Barack Obama bowing to the Chinese like prime minister or whatever. Nothing wrong against that. Aren't presidents and heads of state supposed to like talk to each other? I don't know. That seems a little thin, but okay.
One where we saw repeated again that last month at the G20 summit, where Trump smirked along with Putin, making a joke out of Russia's very real and very dangerous assault on our electoral institutions. Trump's view and my view.
I'm sorry, just when they start going in on a Russian like interference in the electoral process, it's like, okay, yeah. Isn't everybody interfering in the American electoral process? Isn't it called like campaign finance donations? Isn't that an interference? Do people know that we can take the U.S. government, politicians can take campaign finance donations from anyone? So Russia interfering with our election, okay, yeah, that sucks. It needs to be addressed, but everybody interferes with our election. If you black, hey, we've been getting our votes interfered with since we got here. So
debases our cherished democratic values. At the very time, sycophant to a strong man, he plays that role. When he refuses to condemn Saudi Arabia for the gruesome murder of a journalist and American resident, and when he falls in love with a murderous dictator in North Korea. I know it's not literal, but think what message it sends around the world. He undermines our democracy.
On that, he is correct. We definitely do not need to be promoting dictators, but you can't really control who's the head of the state unless you kill them.
Democratic alliances while embracing dictators who appeal to his vanity. And he make no mistake about it, the world sees Trump for what he is: insincere, ill-informed, impulsive, and sometimes corrupt, dangerously incompetent, and incapable, in my view, of world leadership and leadership at home. It's why we've seen such a precipitous drop in how the rest of the world views the United States of America. One recent poll found America's leadership is now less respected than China's and on a par with Russia's. And if we give Donald Trump 4 more years, we'll have a great deal of difficulty, if ever, being able to recover America's standing in the world and our capacity to bring nations together, which is desperately needed. And I think it would be catastrophic to our national security and to our future. We can't let that happen. As President of the United States, I would remind the world that we are the United States of America. We do not coddle dictators. The United States of America gives hate no safe harbor. There'll be no more Charlottesvilles, no more Helsinkis. The challenge of following this disastrous presidency, however, will not be just to restore the reputation and our credibility. It'll be to enact a forward-looking foreign policy for the world as we find it today, and as we anticipate it will be tomorrow and years to come. Much has shifted in the past few years. The international landscape is more crowded, competitive, and complicated. And when we look at what's different today, two key points jump out to me. One is that the speed and intensity of the gravest dangers means that the fates of nations are more intertwined than they ever have been. Climate change, nuclear proliferation, international and terrorism, cyber warfare, disruptive new technologies, mass migration. We're moving like Moore's Law is moving. None of them can be resolved by the United States alone or any nation acting alone.
This is very true. We need foreign allies. We literally cannot hope to run the world essentially by ourselves. The U.S. is not powerful enough. We don't have enough people, and our military is completely stressed out. Stretched out, not stressed out. They are stressed out, but stretched out. So, no, he's right. We do need allies because there's a lot of stuff going on in the world that we can't handle by ourselves.
American security, prosperity, and our way of life require the strongest possible network of partners and alliances working alongside one another. Donald Trump's brand of American First has too often led to America alone, making it much harder to mobilize others to address the threats to our common well-being. The second concern is the rapid advance of authoritarianism, nationalism, and illiberal tendencies around the world, not just in Russia and China, but also among our allies, places like Turkey, the Philippines, Hungary. In every part of the world, technology and instant information are driving change at unprecedented speed and scope, causing many people, home and abroad, to feel confused and very vulnerable. Democratic governments paralyzed by hyper-partisanship, hobbled by corruption, are having a harder time delivering to their people. Trust in institutions around the world is down, and fear of the other is way up. Together, in my view, these forces have driven dangerous resurgence of extreme nationalism and illiberalism, of protectionism and xenophobia. And Donald Trump and the demagogues around the world are leaning into these forces for their own personal and political gain. But in my view, if we focus, this is not a moment to fear. It's a time for us to tap into the strength and audacity that took us to victory in 2 world wars and brought down the Iron Curtain. That triumph of democracy and liberalism over fascism and autocracy is what created the free world. And this contest won't just define our past, it will define our future. Today, democracy is under intense pressure, more than any time since the 30s, in my view. Freedom House has reported that of the 41 countries consistently ranked as free from 1985 to 2005, 22 have registered net declines in freedom in the last 5 years.
What does he mean by net declines in freedom? All right, let me see if he follows up on it.
Yet, while the world's democracies...
Okay, so he's probably not. What does he mean by declines in freedom? I mean, does he mean declines in rights? Does he mean that, you know, here in the U.S. we're losing our ability to, I don't know, practice the First Amendment? Because we are, and it's not Trump and the Republicans that are the most adamant about taking those rights away. I mean, I can't say anything criticizing the I can't even say their name. The landowners, the deed owners. You know, I can't say anything criticizing them. I can't say anything criticizing the Alphabet gang. I can't say anything criticizing them, or else somebody's gonna come after me. Even if I'm critical in regards to black folk. Like, it seems like this group, whatever, I'm not saying any particular group, is racist, or this group, whatever, don't like black people. So when he says loss of freedom, that to me, that's a nothing burger. He's not really saying what freedoms we've lost. We still have the Constitution, we still got the First and Second Amendment, and it remains to be seen if Trump is going to suspend those. So I don't think he can, but we'll see.
Look to America to stand for the values that unite us and truly lead the free world. Donald Trump seems to be on the other team. While those living under oppression, yearning for freedom, look to the United States for hope, Trump has nothing really to offer. We can't forget that democracy is the road our society, the root and wellspring of our power, and the source of our renewal. It strengthens and amplifies our leadership to keep us safe in the world, and it's the engine of our ingenuity that has driven all our economic process and progress. You know, it's part of who we are and how we see the world, but maybe equally important, how the world sees us. As president, I will ensure that democracy is once again the watchword of U.S. foreign policy, not to launch some moral crusade.
Never been a watchword of U.S. foreign policy. We actually don't really care about democracy that much as someone who has actually enforced U.S. foreign policy firsthand. Democracy ain't that much. America cares about, motherfucker, what can you give us? Because that oil over there looking kind of nice.
But because it's in our enlightened self-interest, we have to restore our ability to rally the free world, so we can once more make a stand upon new fields of action together to face new challenges. We only have one opportunity to reset this democracy after Trump, and we have to be prepared to make the most of it. So what does it mean, at least from my perspective in practice? First, it means preparing and reinvigorating our own democracy, even as we strengthen coalitions of democracies that will stand with us on every continent. I'll start by putting our own house in order, remaking our education system so the child's opportunity in life isn't determined by their zip code or their race. Reforming our criminal justice system eliminates inequities and disparities in the system, and putting teeth back into our Voting Rights Act. I will seek greater transparency in our campaign finance systems. We need to get big money out altogether and ensure that foreign dark money doesn't continue to pollute our politics.
Wasn't I just talking about that? Literally, any group of people or person can give as much money as they want in the form of campaign finances, and they can literally make the U.S. government essentially do what they want. Like, why do you think we're so friendly? We pretend like China is the ultimate threat, but you know, when you understand how much of our infrastructure that China owns, you start realizing, oh wow, U.S. is like the world's like whore. Do whatever you want as long as you got the money. It's not a good way to be, and we weren't always like this.
We need, in my view, to dedicate greater resources, including cyber resources, to defend our electoral system.
Cybersecurity is the biggest threat to really all of us since the proliferation of the atomic weapon. This is not an exaggeration.
Which is still under siege. I served as a founding member of the Transatlantic Commission on Election Integrity to fight back against Russia's attacks on Western democracies. We asked candidates all across Europe and North America to sign a pledge, committing to transparency in campaign finances and to reject the use of fabricated and hacked material. Now that I'm a candidate for office, I signed that pledge myself. And I urge everyone running for president, including the President of the United States, to sign that same pledge. It's the right thing to do. As individuals, as a nation, we have to prove to the world the United States is prepared to lead, not just by the example of our power, but by the power of our example. To that end, as president, I will take decisive steps to renew our American values by returning transparency to our government. We believe in freedom of religion. That's why I will end the Muslim ban. We believe in free speech. That's why I'll end the gag rule, the global gag rule that prevents money from getting to NGOs who even talk about family planning. We believe in the power of free press. That's why I'll return immediately to daily press briefings in the White House, the State Department, and the Defense Department. We are a nation of immigrants.
I believe that Trump was doing daily press briefings during the COVID, and they was criticizing him heavily.
But President Trump took those words,
We are a nation of immigrants, but this country was built by slaves. Don't let them forget that. These Democrats, they'll try to scoop right over that. Nothing wrong with immigrants. Hey, come here and do your thing, but this is a country of slaves who built this. Don't get it twisted.
those literal words, nation of immigrants, out of the statement, the mission statement of our Citizenship and Immigration Services. I will restore those words. It matters. Our Statue of Liberty, not very far from here, says, in 3, I'll reverse Trump's detrimental asylum policies, raise our target for refugees to a level commensurate with our responsibility and the global need that exists. The Biden administration would immediately end the horrific practice of separating families at our borders, holding children, and for
We're going to end the practice of separating Black folks from their families that the U.S. has been doing for 400 years, called the prison industrial complex. What do y'all think? Leave a comment.
tensions. There's no need for us to do that and still our borders. I'd order a review of the temporary protective status to vulnerable populations who cannot fully believe and find the safety of their own countries, ripped apart by violence and disasters, including Venezuelans and Haitians.
These countries are ripped apart because a lot of the U.S. foreign policy is to oppress them or take their resources. Haiti, are we still sanctioning Haiti? Is Haiti still the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere? Venezuela? I mean, are we going to be picking leaders again? If that's the U.S.'s decision, I mean, if that's how our foreign policy is going in and removing leaders that we don't fuck with, but the people fuck with, that's how we essentially got into Vietnam. Like, what he's saying is we're going to be going in and it's going to be business as usual. The foreign policy of the last 50 years is going to be back in play. That foreign policy is what led to 9/11.
We've always been a nation that chooses science over fiction. And from climate change to standards to harmful environmental toxins to global health policy, we're going to return facts to our policy making. I'll renew a government-wide focus on uplifting the rights of women and girls at home and abroad, and revitalize our national commitment to advancing human rights and democracy around the world. These changes and many more, which I've released on our website, are just a start, a day one down payment on our commitment to living our democratic values at home. And then I will invite fellow Democratic leaders, and I mean this, invite fellow Democratic leaders to put strengthening democracy back in the global stage. I'll organize and host in the United States during my first year in administration where I elected a global summit for democracy, renewal of the spirit and shared purpose of the nations of the free world. Building off the successful model we instituted during the Obama-Biden administration with the Nuclear Safety Summit. Leaders who attend must come prepared to cooperate and make concrete commitments to take on corruption and advance human rights in their own nations.
We need to address our corruption as well. I mean, I know that's just kind of, nearly impossible, but yeah.
We have to be honest about, excuse me, to be honest about our friends that are falling short and forge a common agenda to address the greatest threats to our shared values. We'll include civil society organizations from around the world that stand on the front lines in defense of democracy in their countries. We'll challenge the private sector, including the tech companies and social media giants, to make their own commitments. America's openness fueled their success.
Very true. We're at this point in 2020, these social media companies, Facebook, even YouTube, IG, Twitter, et cetera, they need to start being held accountable. Because right now they're just having any person say anything and it goes, or they're the authority to what's legitimate or not. Hence the whole Corona situation, vaccinations. They won't even talk about the dangers of vaccine. If I even mention that type of stuff, they'll flag your YouTube page. I don't really care, but if you even mention any science that counteracts, what they are trying to sell, the corporate medical industry, mass industry is trying to sell, then I mean that's kind of bullshit, because believe it or not, these social media companies owe everything to the people of their country. I mean, for the most part, taxpayer dollars, intellectual capital, cybersecurity goes towards ensuring that these companies can thrive. And by the way, bailouts and all that good stuff. So yeah, they need to start being held responsible. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised that in the coming probably decade, that a lot of these companies start getting sued, and I mean really, really sued for all types of stuff, spreading all types of information, but also defamation lawsuits. We literally are at the point where someone can be accused of a crime by someone else, and social media convicts that person before they ever even go to trial. That way, by the time they've gotten to trial, the jury pool is already so tainted and with information, all the information that's on social media, that you can be convicted before you even go to trial. And I think that a lot of these social media people, these companies, need to be held accountable for slander a lot of the time. So yeah, he's right about that.
I believe they have a duty to make sure their algorithm and platforms are not misused to sow division here at home, or empower their surveillance states to be able to facilitate their oppression and censorship in China or elsewhere, to spread hate.
Let's keep it real too. A lot of these social media, actually all of them, any one that you heard of that's big enough that you know about it, are in complete league with the deep state. So I don't know, just look at, didn't Bezos do like a $4 billion deal with the CIA a few years ago? Like, come on, these people are in league together.
Or to spur people to violence. Secondly, I will equip our people to succeed in the new global economy with a foreign policy for the middle class. To win the competition of the future, we have to double down on sharpening our innovative edge, uniting economic might of our friends and other abusive practices to take them on. We know that economic security is national security, but there are a lot of communities across the country who are hurting because we've neglected basics. Our trade policy has started home by strengthening our greatest asset, the middle class. For when it does well, everyone does well. We have to take care of everything I've talked about on the campaign trail by giving every student the skill and training they need to compete in the 21st century for those jobs of the 21st century. America has access to quality and affordable health care, which is absolutely necessary to invigorate that class.
It's also the most expensive in the world. We haven't even started talking about prescriptions. America might have the worst healthcare system of any first world country in the world.
Class. Investing in rebuilding on our infrastructure, bridges, roads, modernizing airports, high-speed rail, making sure Americans have access.
High-speed rail. Look, they've been trying to game us on this high-speed rail shit for decades now. What high-speed rails do you see in the U.S. now? Has the technology not been around for at least 2 to 3 decades, at least? What is the investment in high-speed rail? They say it's ultra expensive. Okay, well, 8 years of Obama, how much high-speed rail did we invest in? Oh, what happened to those green jobs? Green jobs, right? Come on, man. Nothing burgers.
To broadband networks, reforming our taxes to reward work, not just wealth. Listening and leading on a clean economy revolution to create 10 million new jobs here in the United States. That
government does not create jobs. Don't let them run that game. They only give money.
Pay well, allowing us eventually to export those technologies overseas. I'll invest in research and development. The cornerstone of my presidency will be just that. So the United States is leading the charge for innovation around the world. There's no reason we should be failing or falling behind anyone, China or anywhere else, when it comes to energy, quantum computing, artificial intelligence, 5G.
I keep hearing them mention quantum computing. It's funny because I'm actually in a quantum computing course right now. We are a far ways off from quantum computing being actually practical, for lack of a better word. But yeah, it's there's a lot of technologies that we need to invest in. We got to figure out how to actually make them viable. But that's why you have scientists like me.
High-speed rail. Folks, we have the greatest research universities in the history of the world. We have more of them here than anywhere in the rest of the world combined. That we cannot ensure that our people are ready for this transition will inevitably accompany any new technology. It will be a disaster. We need the most agile system to accommodate these changes. Folks, we're virtually energy independent. We have a strong tradition of the rule of law. I see Jack going from us. That's why the rest of the world invests here, Jack, as you know better than I do, because they know they're safe. And most important, we have an extraordinary population of workers and innovators who have never, ever, ever let our country down when given half a chance. A foreign policy of the middle class will also work to make sure the rules of international economy are not rigged against us. Because when American business compete on a fair playing field, we win. President Trump may think is being tough on China. All that he has delivered as a consequence of that is American farmers, manufacturers, and consumers losing and paying more. His economic decision-making is so short-sighted, and as short-sighted as the rest of his foreign policy. China is playing the long game, extending its global reach, investing in technologies of the future.
Very true. China is on a centuries-long scale of planning, and the U.S. has traditionally been on a, you can't even say decades long, maybe a 4-year plan. You notice how the world is supposed to magically change, or at least they give you the perception that the world is supposed to magically change after the presidential election, but yet the world really hasn't changed. Maybe the rhetoric changes a little bit, maybe perception of America changes a little bit, but the world really hasn't changed since Barack Obama left. Now the world hasn't changed since Bush was in office. For those of you old enough to to remember, like, yeah. So I don't see much changing, no matter who is elected.
Future. When Trump is designating our oldest allies from Canada to the European Union as national security threats.
Ain't no such thing as permanent allies, only permanent interests. And I got that directly from the source, Miss Yvette Cardinal. So that is the damn truth. Whether they were our allies 50 years ago or or they are allies now, allies change. It's study history. World War II, Japan was our enemy. World War I, Japan was our friend. Allies change all the time. I could care less about allies. It's what are my interests now, and how are you helping me? You have to be politically selfish, even and especially in foreign policy.
In order to be able to impose damaging and pointless tariffs. By cutting us off from the economic clout of our partners, he kneecaps our capacity to take on real economic threats. We need to get tough with China. If China has its way, it's going to keep moving and robbing U.S. firms.
We're never gonna get tough on China until we pay back our money that we owe them. So it's a bullshit argument. Getting tough on China, that doesn't mean anything. Again, I've said before, China, last time I checked, and this was a Bloomberg terminal I checked, and this was almost a year ago, China is about 8% that they own of our economy. We're never going to be able to get tough on China until we pay our debt and resource our resources back into the U.S. So that means, warehouses, factories, all that stuff we outsourced. A lot of those jobs aren't going to come back, so we need to figure out a way how to utilize the resources in our country effectively. But getting tough on China, that doesn't really mean anything. And the Democrats aren't going to do it, Republicans aren't going to do it.
Of our technology, intellectual property, and forcing American companies to give it away in order to do business in China. And the most effective way that we need to change is to build a united front of friends and partners to challenge China's abusive behavior, even as we seek to deepen cooperation on issues where our interests are converged, like climate change and preventing the nuclear proliferation. It's not going to be a back to business as usual on trade with me. We need new rules. We need new process that has the voices of all the shareholders at the table, including leaders representing labor and the environment. We must negotiate from the strongest possible position. On our own, we represent a quarter of the world's GDP, But when we're joined by fellow democracies, that number doubles. China can't afford to ignore half the global economy if we're united.
It's true. The good thing, well, that's not a good thing, but the thing about China is, you know, we have a lot of money invested, and China actually has clearly has a lot of money invested in the U.S. The problem comes with that relationship is what happens if the U.S. and the other world's democracies refuse to pay back the money that they owe China, and what's China going to do? Something to think about.
That gives us substantial leverage to shape the future rules of the road, everything from the environment to labor to trade to technology to transparency, so we can continue to reflect the democratic interests and values, America's interest and values, not China, not Russia's. The world does not organize itself. And if we do not shape the norms and institutions that govern relations among nations, rest assured that some nation will step into the vacuum, or no one will, and chaos will prevail. Which brings me to my final point. Biden's foreign policy agenda will place America back at the head of the table, working with our partners to mobilize global action on global threats, especially those unique to our country. American leadership is not infallible. We've made missteps and mistakes. Too often we rely solely on the might of our military instead of drawing on the full array of our strengths. But let me be clear, I will never hesitate to protect the American people, including when necessary by the use of force. As Vice President, I work with President Obama to craft the military and diplomatic campaign that ultimately defeated ISIS. In fact,
defeated ISIS? Is ISIS still around or no? I'm not even sure. You know, it's funny. We don't really talk about the wars as much anymore. So who are we fighting? Pretty good question. I mean, Bin Laden's dead. Al Qaeda is gone, basically. Taliban has been completely demolished, but it's still around, little hints there. But if that's the case, why the fuck are we still out there then? Just a question.
It turned out Trump's weapon to destroy the so-called caliphate was a continuation of the plan we put in place.
Why would he change the plan if it's working?
The personnel that we had put in place. We have the strongest military in the world. And I would argue, in the history of the world. But as president, I will ensure it stays that way. I will make investments necessary to equip our troops for the challenges of this century, not the last century, this one and the next one. But the use of force should be a last resort, not a first. Used only to defend our vital interest, when the objective is clear and achievable, and with the informed, I emphasize the informed consent of the American people. It's long past time we end the forever wars, which have cost us untold blood and treasure. I have long argued that we should bring home the vast majority of our combat troops from the wars in Afghanistan and the Middle East.
All of them. All of them. That's the same con Barack Obama ran. I believed it too. I read his book, The Dreams of My Father and Audacity of Hope. He said he was going to pull out. The moment he tried to, supposedly Congress stopped him. He left him right there. So they've been running this con for 20 years now. They're not going to be pulling troops, all of them. They're not going to pull all of them out of these pointless wars. They're not going to do that. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a new war that comes up. They're going to vote almost unilaterally in favor for it. So they've been running the same the same shit, nothing new. In fact, actually, Trump has actually been doing the exact same thing, been trying to pull people out. But, we're in wars in so many different places, that doesn't really mean that much.
And narrowly focus on our mission to deal with Al-Qaeda and ISIS in the region.
You just said he completely destroyed ISIS, right?
And we should end our support for the Saudi-led war in Yemen. It's hurting us.
Syria, Sudan, Venezuela. A lot of places we need to end these wars in.
Staying entrenched in unwinnable conflicts drains our capacity to lead on so many other issues that require our attention. It prevents us from rebuilding the other instruments of American power. So I'll make it my mission to restore American leadership, elevate diplomacy as a principal tool of our foreign policy. I will reinvest in a diplomatic corps that this administration has hollowed out and put our diplomacy back in the hands of genuine professionals. So you hear an echo on the 7th floor of the State Department any longer.
Genuine professionals. Yeah, you do need professionals, but I can't lie. I completely understand why Trump will have somebody like Kushner or his daughter right next to him, because you can't trust these lifelong politicians. You can't trust anybody really. But the Joe Bidens of the world have been in office for 50 years, man. I understand that, and let's not forget, Susan Rice was a professional, and that whole situation, and it wasn't Beirut. Where was it at? Where did she fuck up? That whole situation. Hold on, let me look that up really quick. It's really quick. Let's see. It's Google. Susan Rice. Let's see. Benghazi. That's what it was. Okay, it's Benghazi. Thank you, Google. So we all remember Benghazi. That was foreign policy. I mean, fuck ups happen, things happen, but a lot of those times, those positions are just, those people have been there forever.
Above all, and I've seen diplomats here in our administration and others, above all, diplomacy requires credibility. And Donald Trump has absolutely corroded our country's credibility.
I think Donald Trump further emphasizes who the U.S. is, but he has definitely destroyed some credibility. All presidents do.
Conduct American foreign policy, and especially times of crisis, the President of the United States' word, his or her word, is the single most valuable asset the country has. By pulling out of treaty after treaty, reneging on policy after policy.
Well, Trump did vow that he will pull out of a bunch of policies and treaties. So, I mean, that's kind of his word, He also vowed that he would strip the ACA, that's the Affordable Care Act, and he's been doing that. So he's sticking to his word. Of course, his word sucks and his policy is terrible, but that's what his people voted on.
Walking away from America's responsibilities and lying about matters big and small, this president has bankrupted America's word in the world at the moment. He has, I don't know how to say it, he's alienated us from the very democratic allies we need most. Trump has taken a battering ram to the NATO alliance. He treats us like it's some kind of American-run protection racket. He just doesn't get it. I really don't think he gets it. NATO is at its heart, the very heart of NATO and our national security. More than that, it is a alliance of values. It's an alliance of values that makes it far more durable, reliable, and powerful than partnerships built on coercion, and on cash. The same is true of our core alliances in Asia. Let me be clear. Working cooperatively with other nations to share our values and goals doesn't make America, as it seems to imply in this administration, suckers. It makes us more secure, enables us to be more successful. We amplify our own strengths, extend our presence around the globe, magnify our impact, while sharing the burden of leadership with our partners. No country, even one as powerful as ours, can go it alone in the challenges of the 21st century. I respect no borders and cannot be contained by any walls. As president, I will do more than just restore the historic partnerships. I'll lead an effort to reimagine them, to better meet the challenges we're grappling with today in the next 20 or 30 years, to keep NATO military capability sharp, while also expanding our capacity to take on non-traditional threats like weaponized corruption, cyber theft, new challenges in space and on the high seas. And by the way, the increase in NATO defense spending, I would point out, started under the Obama-Biden administration.
NATO ain't shit. Let's keep it a buck. NATO ain't shit. They only go into countries that really they can get something from a lot of times. I mean, you hear and read so much stuff about what NATO goes in and does. Either has a minimal impact or it's just as corrupt as the people that they're trying to so-called fight against. So NATO ain't shit. You ain't gonna convince me that NATO is anything other than a proxy of the U.S. At all. Because there's plenty of African countries that could use the help of NATO. They ain't nowhere to be found.
We need to look for opportunities to strengthen cooperation with domestic friends beyond North America and Europe, reaching to our partners in Asia, including Japan, South Korea, Australia, India, to fortify our collective capabilities, sustaining our ironclad commitments to Israel security, regardless of how much you may disagree with its present leader. It is essential. Integrating our friends in Latin America and Africa and seizing opportunities throughout the broader network of democracies in order to gain and regain.
See what he said? Let's do it. I'm gonna go back. Listen. You always gotta listen to these people.
Our friends in Latin America and Africa and seizing opportunities throughout the broader network of democracies in order to gain and regain the confidence of the world, we have to prove it.
Seize the opportunities in Africa and Latin America. Are y'all don't hear what they saying? This is the same shit we've been doing for dozens and dozens of years. Except it's gonna be worse because we're not gonna question Joe Biden like we do Trump. But do y'all see that trick move he threw? Seize opportunities. They talk about going into Africa and taking resources or hoarding them like they've been doing. And resources is not just gold, oils, and minerals. It's also people. So pay attention. Pay attention.
Again, that America says means what it says, especially when it comes to the challenges that will define our time. Renewed threat of nuclear war, mass migration.
Very true. Trump pulling out of the nuclear, nuclear treaty that we're supposed to do? That was not a good look. But also, we forget that during the Obama administration, the U.S. we were supposed to nuclearize, or however what the word is, where they basically put the safety on. We're supposed to do that for like half of our nuclear arsenal. We pulled out of that during Obama's year. So, yeah.
Disruptive technologies, climate change. We cannot be a credible voice on the proliferation of nuclear security and on proliferation of nuclear security while we're abandoning the very deals that we had negotiated. From North Korea to Iran, Russia to Saudi Arabia, Trump has made the prospect of nuclear proliferation a new nuclear arms race, and even the use of nuclear weapons more likely, not less. I've worked on these issues my entire career.
He spent his entire career in politics. That's why. Of course he's worked on these issues.
I understand what's at stake and understand the consequences of failing to act. That's why, as president, I renew our commitment to arms control for a new era. The historic Iran nuclear deal we negotiated blocked Iran from gaining nuclear weapons, with inspectors on the ground, international inspectors confirming.
Also, we gave them the Stuxnet worm, and we killed a bunch of their nuclear scientists in a bombing. So yeah, there's that.
That the agreement was being kept. Yet Trump cast it aside, prompting Iran to restart its nuclear program, become more provocative, and raising the risk of another disastrous war in the region.
I'm not an Iranian expert, but it seems like if they want a nuclear program to be able to power their cities, then it's not up for us to stop them. I guess the problem comes from, and I'm not naive either, that Iran is known for being a regional threat. But are they a threat to the United States of America, or are they a threat to Israel? Because I'm not an Israeli citizen. I've never been to Israel, don't plan on going. So, I mean, hey, if Iran wants to get some nuclear weapons, I mean, I don't see them as being any more dangerous than North Korea or China or Russia or any other country that has nuclear weapons. I mean, all they have to do is just start shooting. They ain't got nothing to do with the country. And so I don't know.
If Tehran returns to compliance with the deal, I would rejoin the agreement and work with our allies to strengthen and extend it while more effectively pushing back against Iran's destabilizing activities, which under the agreement we were allowed to do, we had partners to do with us.
They want to go to war with Iran because it would be good for business for them. That's what I believe. Remember, one of Hillary Clinton's stances was to be more aggressive with Iran, and really, I think that probably is going to lead to worse situations. So they want to go to war with Iran. They want another war. They always want another war.
North Korea, I will empower our negotiators to jumpstart a sustained coordinated campaign with our allies and others, including China, to advance our shared objective, and it is a shared objective, a denuclearized North Korea. I'll pursue an extension of the New START Treaty, an anchor of...
Never gonna denuclearize North Korea. It's not gonna happen. Why would North Koreans take away the one aspect of their society the U.S. is scared to shit of? Not to mention the fact that they're a direct partner with China. So why would they denuclearize? They're just gonna keep replacing whoever the next dictator in line is for that family. It is what it is. I mean, that's just the way they want to live their lives. Okay, cool, but you're not gonna. The North Korea is used as a deterrent to the U.S. So you're never gonna vote and have a president say, "Hey, get North Korea, get rid of your nuclear weapons." It's not gonna happen.
strategic stability between the United States and Russia and use that as a foundation for new arms control agreements. I would take other steps as well to demonstrate our commitment to reducing the role of nuclear weapons. As I said in 2017 when we were still in office, I believe the sole purpose of the U.S. nuclear arsenal should be deterring and, if necessary, retaliating against a nuclear attack.
There should be no point of a nuclear arsenal unless we're fighting fucking aliens. There's no point of a nuclear arsenal. I can cause more damage to you, your country, your group from my computer than you can from a nuclear weapon. A nuclear weapon, you just kill everybody. There's no reason for nuclear weapons. We should never even have invented those goddamn things. And that's the truth. But they're here now, so we can't do nothing about it.
As president, I'll put that belief into practice after consultation with our allies and our military. By the same token, we cannot push nations to meet their humanitarian obligations to address the biggest refugee migration crisis since World War II if we're unwilling to live up to our democratic values and firmly reject Trump's nativist rhetoric. It stands out that our nation, when you see a father and a daughter's body on a shore, dead, when children are taken away from their parents.
Okay. Were they not doing this under the Barack Obama administration? Yes or no? Okay, Obama had the highest rate of deportations than the previous 3 presidents combined. So what he's saying is bullshit. He's gonna be doing the same thing as Obama. To be honest, I don't really care that much because I'm not an immigrant. But I will say that we do have some immigration problems, to say the least. But the whole kids and stuff dead on the beach, man, you ain't gotta go that far to see that shit. Just go down to any hood, shit. Or just go to prison. You go see the same shit. People getting separated from their families. Oh, but I ain't talking about immigrants though no more, am I? So hey, it is what it is, man. That's nothing.
Stuck in overcrowded detention facilities.
Overcrowded detention facilities? Have you ever heard of Rikers Island? All right then. Come on, man.
Denied the most basic necessities.
Flint. The water is still poisoned in Flint, Michigan, if I'm not mistaken, yes? All right.
When families are ripped apart, abandoning our deepestly held values, it does nothing to increase our security at the border, and everything to diminish our standing in the world and the ability to lead by the power of our example. We need sensible policies to improve screening priorities for the legal points of entry, to make smart investments in border technology. We need to work again with Canada and Mexico as neighbors, not as adversaries. We need to focus on the root causes driving migrants to our borders in the first place. As vice president, I secured commitments from leaders of El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras after multiple meetings to take on corruption, violence, and the endemic poverty in those countries that are the driving force of sending people away from their homes and to our borders. And then I worked with Congress in a bipartisan effort to get $750 million aid package to help support those reforms. And guess what? It was working. Security improved. Migrant flows began to decrease in countries like El Salvador. But Trump announced the end of our aid to Central America via a tweet with no understanding of the consequences.
I don't really understand why we're giving aid anyway. I mean, what are we aiding? Because again, a lot of these countries are the way they are because of U.S. foreign policy, man. We prop up these monsters, these dictators, these corrupt governments because they do business with us. But again, who are we giving aid to when we have historic levels of of unemployment? I mean, half the country is in poverty. So how are we giving aid to other countries, my taxpayer dollars to other countries, but we can't even give aid to us. We can't even give reparations, which is a form of aid, to black folk here in the U.S. So it's interesting. $750 million ain't that much either. So I don't know what $750 million they think is really doing it, but what does that do? What is that? Buying a McDonald's or something? Like $750 million is nothing.
If elected president, I'll relaunch that initiative with the top to bottom review of our funding to the region, determine how we can continue to drive reforms that deliver results, and they will deliver results. When it comes to technologies for the future, like 5G, artificial intelligence, other nations are.
This guy keeps coughing. I'm sorry. He just looks like he's gonna like fall out on stage.
Are devoting national resources and dominating their development, determining how they will be used. We have to ensure that the 21st century technologies are used to promote greater democracy, shared prosperity, not to curb freedom and opportunity, either at home or abroad. As new technologies shape our economies and societies, we have to ensure that these engines of progress are bound by laws and ethics. We have done it at every technological turning point in our history. The Biden administration will join together with our Democratic allies to develop secure, private sector-led 5G networks, leaving no community, rural or low income, behind. And the last example I'll end with today is how the United States must lead the world to take on the existential threat we all face: climate change. If we don't get this right, not much else will matter.
Climate change is very important. I live in Florida. I live in South Florida. I can see the tides rising. I can see beaches being disappearing more and more. A lot of flooding, especially during high tide. Yeah, I used to live on South Beach, man. Once the high tide would come in, little 5-minute, 10-minute rain, and you're already 2 feet underwater. So climate change is definitely real. That's something that I would agree wholeheartedly with Joe Biden and the Democratic Party on. This is something that needs to be addressed. Not only that, there's a lot of misinformation out there about what climate change does and how it actually works, which is actually pretty, a little sad that we've been dealing with for this long and people still don't understand, still politicize. Every year is for the last like 10, 15 years has been the hottest year on record. We've had way too many crazy hurricanes getting more and more powerful. Climate change is real, folks, and we are causing it. And we are causing our environment to not be habitable as we go on. So we do need to make some changes, some very serious changes. The Trump pulled us out of that climate change accord, and we got Republicans down here in Florida. What was that piece of shit? Rick Scott. Yeah, remember he was the governor before DeSantis. He made it. He banned government workers from actually being able to say climate change on like any official documents or releases. So that it's like, come on, guys, like it's the basics. But he is right. Climate change is something that needs to be addressed. I would agree wholeheartedly with Democrats on that.
I'll put us on a track to achieve a clean energy economy with zero emissions, net zero emissions by 2050. And equally important, because the United States makes up only 50.
That's not going to happen. We're not going to have zero emissions by 2050. Either because the only way we're going to do that is to actually change laws or add new laws. who knows who's gonna be in office in 2024, 2028? So that's bullshit. The only way to change the climate change situation is for the private sector and the people to really start implementing painful changes. Government's not gonna be able to do that.
15% of global emissions. I'll leverage our economic and our moral authority to put the world on a more
U.S. does not have a moral authority at all.
urgent course by rejoining the Paris Climate Accord and convene a summit of the world.
We do need to rejoin the Paris Climate Accord. I agree with that wholeheartedly.
That accord, as negotiated, said we have to up the ante. Convening a summit of the world's largest carbon emitters, relying on nations to raise their ambitions, push progress further and faster. We'll look for enforceable commitments. They'll reduce emissions, and in global shipping and aviation. We'll produce strong measures to make sure other nations can't undercut us economically as we meet our commitments. That includes insisting that China, the world's largest emitter of carbon, stops subsidizing coal exports, outsourcing pollution to other countries by financing billions of dollars of dirty fossil fuel energy projects through their Belt and Road Initiative. These are ambitious goals, I acknowledge. We won't accomplish any of them without the United States, flanked by our fellow democracies, is leading the way. We're facing enemies both without and from within, hoping to exploit the fissures in our society, undermine democracy, break up our alliances, return us to an international system that might determines right. The answer to this threat is more openness, not less. More friendships, more cooperations, more alliances, more democracies. Vladimir Putin wants to tell himself and anyone who he can dupe into believing that the liberal idea, is obsolete because he understands its power. No army on earth can match the electric idea of liberty, passing freely from person to person. It jumps borders, it transcends languages and cultures. It can supercharge communities of ordinary citizens into activists and organizers for change agents. We must once more harness that power and rally the free world to meet the challenges facing us today. Also, the United States of America to lead the way. No other nation has the capacity to do it. No other nation was built on that ideal, that promise alone. And it's overwhelming in our self-interest. We have an obligation to champion liberty and democracy. We have to retain our credibility. We have to look with unrelenting optimism and determination toward the future. Because we can do this. Let's remember who in God's name we are. This is the United States of America. There's not a damn thing we've been unable to do when we've done it together. Thank you for listening to a very thorough speech. May God bless you all and may God protect our troops. Thank you.
Okay. So, y'all got it, man. That's the analysis. That was it. That was just a speech, really. I mean, I would suggest people go to joebiden.com and read his whole thing. Not only that, look at his history, look at the history of the Democratic Party. He said a couple of good things, but for the most part, it's gonna be the same foreign policy that we've been getting for the last, 36 years, maybe. So Joe Biden, the Democratic Party, his VP candidate, Kamala Harris, they're not really offering that much that's any different from what they were offering or what the Republicans are offering now. With the exception of the nuclear proliferation treaty and a Paris Climate Accord, which we really should be a part of, I didn't really hear anything that got me, you know, optimistic about any new changes that's going to be going on. So, I mean, that's it in terms of that. I'll probably do another one. Hell, I might actually do a Trump foreign policy broadcast or show, whatever, just to highlight the differences between the two, if any. If you just go down the list, you'll see that the foreign policy, and this is why I did this specifically. I wanted people to see that they're not going to be that much different, not only from the previous administrations, but the two parties are not going to be that much different. They both vote on war. That's what they do. They both are going to prop up whatever government, whatever party of that government that's most agreeable with America, as they should. I mean, hey, that's how it works. I mean, that's how you should kind of do that, although that is not. You should look out for your country's best interests, but that does not mean that you have to prop up a monster, which we are known for doing, so that that happens. A country wants to rule how they want to rule themselves, and so be it. But for us, our foreign policy definitely needs to be changed because our foreign policy wasn't this foreign policy 60 years ago, post World War II. It wasn't like this until right after. I would say we were supposed to demilitarize after World War II, and we did to an extent, but we also greatly expanded our deep state, our reliance on these contracting companies. So it hasn't served us that well. So that's the Joe Biden analysis. I definitely wanted to talk about the Hololens and the Valve Index. I'm actually going to be purchasing. For those who don't know, Hololens is Hololens Valve Index, both headsets for VR, XR. I need something to develop on. I need something to start really testing a couple of things. I don't want to reveal too much, but so I've heard good things about the Valve Index, and I'm actually going to be starting a project really soon. I'm going to be working on the HoloLens. I've never used it, but yeah, I'm excited. So, but there's one I want to actually buy because I got to start testing some VR apps, and that's gonna be really fun. So VR XR apps, so that's gonna be really fun. Some dope shit is coming down the tube. You all please drop a like, subscribe, leave a comment. I appreciate any feedback, whether it be positive, negative, whatever. Just stay engaged. Thanks again for coming and listening to my bullshit talk. I'm sure was born into. So that's it. Y'all have a good one.